Today we're checking out this Borla S-Type midsection muffler assembly for the 2021 and newer 3.5 liter EcoBoost and the 5.0 F-150 with the factory dual exhaust, but excluding the Raptors. Now, if you want a deeper growl from your exhaust, quicker throttle feel, and less drone than the stock unit, without swapping for a whole catback system, then this midsection is a clean, simple upgrade that's definitely worth checking out. All right out of the box, the key feature here is going to be that Borla S-Type sound. So on our Wake the Neighbor scale, this is going to earn a very solid 3 out of 5. If you want something even more aggressive, then you should be looking towards that Borla Attack series. But for something that has plenty of character, but isn't over the top annoying, this S-Type is really gonna hit a sweet spot. It gives you a deeper tone and a nice spark when you hit the gas, and it stays tame on the highway so you can still talk in the cab and you don't get any droning at sustained RPMs. This piece replaces the factory mid muffler and keeps your stock tailpipes. So you get the sound boost without changing the look or redoing the entire system. It uses straight through muffler internals for better flow, so the truck feels a bit more lively when you pop that throttle. Folks pick this over a full catback system when they want an easy swap, a little bit lower cost, and a stock style fit. No tune is going to be needed, and the emissions gear stays in place so you know you're street legal. When it comes to the construction on this, you're getting stainless steel tubing with smooth mandrel bends and a high quality Borla muffler built in. The welds are clean, the flanges are gonna line up right, and the whole section is made to handle heat, winter road salt, and daily driving abuse. Clamps and hardware are included, so it goes on tight and stays rattle free, and if you stick with me, we'll show you that install here in a minute. Now, as far as the pricing goes on this, it's coming in right in that $1,000 price range. For a stainless midsection that delivers Borla sound and keeps the install fairly simple, that's a solid value if you want to step up from the stock without buying that full catback system. When it comes to the installation on this one, it's going to get rated a 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and you can have this job done in 4 hours or less of your time. Now let's see exactly how this process works with a video from one of our AmericanTrucks customers.
Now that we've got the Borla exhaust all the way installed, let's go over the things I used, things I didn't need, things I added along the way. The T9, WD-40, any type of water displacement is great for threads on bolts, especially if you live up north, probably dealing with a little bit of corrosion from the winter. Recommend this on the rubber grommets that the hanger bars go into. This makes it easier for the slide the bars out of them, slide the bars back into them. 3/8" drive ratchet, that was needed. They also wanted a 6-inch ratchet extension. Used that one, and I added in a 3-inch ratchet extension at the same time. In some other places where it's a little tighter to get around things, 6 inches was a little too long, 3 inches did the trick. 10 and 13 millimeter standard size sockets were great. I also added in the 10 millimeter and the 13 millimeter deep well. Sometimes it was just easier to use those. 10 millimeter, especially on the tips where they mount to the rear bumper. The screw is a little long. 10 millimeter deep well did the trick. 15 millimeter deep well for all the clamps that are on the kit. Pry bar to pry apart the stock exhaust. It's got a little clamp on each side we showed earlier. Small screwdriver does the trick. Did not need the large pry bar that they recommended. And then parts at the end that you're gonna have left over. 2 bolts and 2 of these spacers from the clamps on the stock exhaust. Those don't need to be reused. The clamps that it comes with already has them installed. And then I also grabbed a headlamp just to make things a little easier to see.
All right, step 1 is to lubricate all hangers, rubber isolators, bolts, and nuts. Went ahead and did that this morning, let it set up. As we hit every bolt and nut, I will point those out for each step along the way. Depending on the age of your truck, you may not need to do that. It has in here as a note that it's essentially optional. Used vehicles obviously will need it more, especially for up north. You're going through harsh winters. This truck's fairly new, has very limited miles on it, so I'm not expecting it to need a thorough soak, but went ahead and did it anyway. Step 2, we're going to be removing the passenger side rear tailpipe isolator assembly. So rear tailpipe here, and then it goes into this rubber isolator with this bracket, and this bracket underneath is held on by these two 10mm bolts. So we're going to remove those now. All right, 10mm standard, too shallow to reach the bottom of the bolt. The threads sticking out are a little long, so I'm going to go ahead and grab a 10mm deep well, and then we'll come back and continue. All right, switched over to a 10mm deep well. This bolt sticks out a little far, so it's hard to get a shallow socket on there all the way down on the bolt, so I went ahead and grabbed the deep well instead. Not in Borla's instructions, but probably a good idea for you. Right, we're going to switch to the impact, make this a little faster. All right, so there you have it. Both bolts on a single plate, and then both nuts here. I'm just gonna put these back together so we don't lose them. These need to be retained. They're gonna be used when we reinstall this part of the exhaust. All right, following our exhaust back from that first isolator that we just removed, we're gonna come here just in front of the rear axle and be removing this 10mm bolt off the frame that's holding up this section of the passenger side exhaust. So I'm gonna grab the 10mm impact and do that as well. And not in Borla's instructions, but this bolt here is the same bracket on the other side that we just removed. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this 10mm as well, just to make sure this will slide out of the way completely. The next step is going to be to remove this 15mm nut off of this bolt that connects the passenger side exhaust pipe into the muffler. So this is directly above the rear axle, and again, a 15mm. Now that the nut is off this clamp, we're going to get a flathead screwdriver, and we're going to lift this locking tab on this side. And that's starting to wiggle free a little. I previously only loosened this nut, or this bolt here, on the step 3 where we disconnected this isolator and removed this bolt here. Now that I've got this whole tailpipe assembly loose, I can see that that bolt actually needs to come all the way out. So we're gonna remove that the rest of the way, and then we should be able to remove the entire passenger side tailpipe assembly. All right, so here is the passenger tailpipe assembly removed. As you can see, there's quite a bit of overlap where this was inside that locking tab. Now that we've got the passenger side done, we're gonna switch over to the driver's side, do the exact same steps, starting with this back actuator, back support bracket here. Again, 10mm deep well was the choice. Fits on the bolt a little better. And again, same bracket with 2 bolts in it. And we're just gonna throw these nuts on there, safekeeping. All right, now to the driver's side, we're gonna be removing this bracket here with this bolt, and then around on the other side of the exhaust pipe with this bolt here. Again, both 10mm. All right, back to this muffler section. Now doing the driver's side. Again, that's a 15mm bolt, and then we will need a pry bar on the other side to pry that clip loose so that we can slide the rear exhaust pipe section off for the driver's side. There we go, should be free now, and we can remove the driver's side exhaust pipe. We're gonna try a little penetrating oil in there, see if that'll help slide that piece off easier. All right, so we just disconnected the passenger and driver's side tailpipe assemblies and remove those. Then the next step is actually to come all the way forward past the muffler to the resonator, and in front of the resonator is this main bracket next to the transmission. We're gonna be removing these 2 bolts it's the last 2 bolts holding on the exhaust system. Everything else after that is rubber grommets, which you can see one there next to the muffler. So after we get these 2 bolts out, we'll be able to remove the entire stock exhaust system from the cat's back. So catalytic converters are just forward here in front of the transmission, and in front of this brace. You can see the cover for the one there, and the other runs to the driver's side. Once we remove these 2 bolts here, we will then be able to pull out the entire muffler and resonator assembly from the truck. All right, go ahead and grab a 13mm socket. We're gonna get these 2 bolts, one on each side of this bracket out. I went and used the 3-inch extension. The 6-inch with the impact was a little long. If you were just using a ratchet, that would work just fine. But if you have a 3-inch, go ahead and grab it. Little pro tip they don't put in the instructions. There may be some exhaust water in your exhaust pipe, so maybe don't lay right underneath the bracket as you remove these 2 bolts. Otherwise you get a free shower. All right, with those 2 removed, now slide this bracket back out of the way. And then this is gonna separate just here on the other side of the bracket. You can see it's starting to move there, and it's free. All right, I've repositioned to this clamp here. The muffler is held on with this one. I'm just going to see if I can slide the whole assembly back. And looks like the rear one is free. And there's the front one. And then just drop this down right on top of me. There is frame and axle in the way, so you have to slide it forward. All right, and we're gonna slide this around the pipe the resonator was connected into so we can get the back end of the muffler over the axle. All right, so you're gonna grab that front muffler assembly, reconnect it in right where the old resonator was, slide those 2 brackets up, and then we're gonna feed in the 2 stock bolts that we had before back into the exhaust system that's coming back from the cats and catalytic converters and the motor. And then I'm just gonna hand tighten these for now. And then I'll grab the wrench and we're gonna tighten these down. Not tight, I'm gonna leave them really loose, but just enough to hold it up there in the process. All right, I've got the bracket in place, got a couple of bolts fed in to hold it in place. I'm gonna tighten these down just a little bit so it'll hold the front muffler assembly to the original exhaust coming from the engine. The front muffler assembly piece with the Borla logo on it has a seam. If you rotate that to the top, then the Borla S-type logo will be on both sides readable. If you put the seam on the bottom, then the Borla logo will be upside down. If you care about that, do it. If not, then hey, you can probably stick it in here any way you want. All right, so I've got the bolts threaded most of the way through, but as you can see, this front muffler assembly still moves around a little bit, but it can support its own weight on the bracket. Again, that was a 13mm socket for those 2 bolts to go back in there. All right, now we're gonna grab this mid-pipe section and insert it up to the front muffler assembly that we just installed. Before we do that, we're gonna slide this clamp on. Paying attention that the bolt here, to make it accessible, I'm gonna slide it on with it down. And then we're gonna slide this on while also sliding this back into the rubber grommet here. Slide it all the way forward into that front muffler assembly, and then we'll line up the clamp right on top. This is a 15mm socket. All right, I've got that tightened loosely. It still wiggles around in there, just so that I can make any adjustments if necessary as we connect the other pieces. If there needs to be a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch anywhere just to make everything fit together nicely, it'll still slide around. All right, with the Y pipe, you're gonna start by grabbing a clamp. Again, I'm gonna face that nut down, adding it to this mid-pipe section. Then the Y pipe is going to slide in to the mid-pipe while also getting this
into the hanger bracket, and the Y pipe will go over the rear axle. Make sure you move your clamp out of the way, put it onto the Y pipe piece since that's going to be the exterior piece, and that way you can slide that Y pipe all the way forward, get that hanger into the rubber grommet as much as possible. If you see here, it actually goes almost all the way. There's a weld on this side, so it's going up as close to that as possible. Before you install the tailpipe assemblies back onto the truck, make sure you remember to put the clamps on the Y pipe assembly. I'm going to face one on each side so that I can get to the nut on both. And then I'm going to start with the driver's side tailpipe assembly since it was a little more difficult to get into place around the rear tire. And it will get reinstalled in exactly the same way that we uninstalled it when we started. All right, little pro tip. Go ahead and put the bracket that we pulled out back here, and I threaded the two nuts onto when we removed it so I didn't lose them. Go ahead and stick that bracket back in. That way when you get this tailpipe assembly in, you've got something to hang it on before you get the rest of the bolts back into place. Since I've got that on there, I'm gonna go ahead and thread the nuts on just to get them started and to make sure this doesn't fall off. Grabbing a 10mm deep well, just so that I can tighten this up a little more. Not tight, just got enough threads on there to where I know it's in there. Now we're gonna work on this other side.
All right, here you can see the two bolts that I just got put back in for the driver's side tailpipe assembly. The metal clamps acting as the nut inside the frame popped out when I removed this side, and they weren't clamped in place anymore. So it made it a little more challenging to get those bolts lined up onto the threads, which is why I went ahead and put a ratchet on them and threaded more of the bolt in there just to make sure that I had caught the back of the nut and had enough of the bolt going through so that this was hanging in place. They're not tightened yet, still loose so that I can move everything around and get everything lined up, but went ahead and threaded some extra threads through just to make sure that it was on there. Now we're gonna move over to the passenger side and do the same thing. All right, just like the driver's side, on the passenger side, I'm gonna start by putting this clamp in first to make it a little easier to hang the passenger side exhaust tailpipe assembly once I get it onto the Y pipe. All right, now with the passenger side tailpipe assembly, we're gonna do the same thing, sliding this end into the Y pipe and then aligning the exhaust tip onto the bracket we just installed. Now that it's on the Y pipe and on the rear bracket, I'm gonna go ahead and install the nuts onto the exhaust pipe. Now that we've got the tailpipes installed and everything bolted up, we're gonna tighten up these two clamps on the Y pipe that connect into the passenger and driver side exhaust tailpipes. And like I mentioned before, I put the clamps on so that both nuts were facing down and on the outside just to make it a little easier to get to. And then I slid the clamps as far back to the Y pipe, leaving just a little bit of gap so that it was catching as much of the inside exhaust pipe as it could inside the clamp. Exhaust pipe should be up to here. This is where it is
expanded from the Y pipe so that this can slide inside, but I just wanted to make sure that I got as tight a seal as possible. So did that on both of those. Now that I've got the Y pipe clamps installed, I'm gonna check this pipe hanger bracket, making sure it's coming through the rubber grommet enough, and it's got enough there, it's supported, not gonna have any issues. And then moving up towards the mid pipe assembly, there's this other rubber grommet, and this one is hanging on. I slid it forward a little bit just to make sure there was enough of this pipe hanger bracket coming through so it's not gonna have any issues, sliding or popping off or anything like that. Now with the rear of the driver's side tailpipe threaded on and the two nuts on, I'm gonna go ahead and reattach this bracket. I never removed the rubber grommet off the hanger. I just pulled the whole thing off the truck. So it's gonna bolt in here and then on this other side over here, just like it did when we uninstalled it. Here you can see I've got the passenger side tailpipe assembly, this bolt here, and then the one on the front here, both installed. And now we're going to check the tailpipe exits and make sure that they are level, look like they're in the correct position on the bumper, and then we'll get everything tightened down. So I've got the exhaust on each side lined up. You can see the passenger side there, and then the driver's side there. Both of them flush with the edge of the bumper. The height is a little bit different, but that'll be fixed as I adjust the brackets and tighten them up. Just wanted to make sure they were pretty much centered in the exhaust cutouts and ready to go so I can start tightening things up. So we're gonna do that now. Now that everything looks like it's aligned correctly, we're gonna tighten up this clamp, moving from the small resonator up to the mid pipe section, and tighten this down again with a 15 millimeter. Our last of the 4 clamps is this one from the mid pipe assembly up into the front muffler assembly. Still 15 millimeter. I've still got the clamp spun, a little bit of overlap, trying to capture as much of these two pipes overlapping as possible. I'm gonna tighten this down. Instructions actually say not to tighten this clamp at all, so I went ahead and loosened it up so it's completely loose. And then we're gonna move on to the next section. Now back on the passenger side, we're gonna move up to this bracket and tighten it up. And then same thing with the bolt up on the top. These are both still 10 millimeter. And then repeat the process with the 10 millimeter on the driver's side. And once you get the bottom bolt done, do the top bolt. All right, here's that exhaust pipe bracket. And I'm gonna go ahead and thread on these two small nuts just to hold it in place while we get the other bracket lined up. Starting with a 10 millimeter deep well, you tighten these down on the passenger side. And then move over to the driver's side, do the same thing. Now on the driver's side, last 2 bolts here, connecting the front muffler assembly back into the exhaust pipe where it's coming out of the catalytic converters. Just gonna tighten these last 2 down and then we will be done.
All right, that's gonna wrap up our review and install of the Borla S-Type midsection muffler assembly for the 2021 and newer 3.5 liter EcoBoost and the 5.0 F-150s with the factory dual exhaust, but excluding the Raptor. And for all things F-150, keep it right here at American Trucks.